Okay, Doooovid here. Welcome. We are live at the Hanukkuh Diwali Fireside Chat. Shir Tikvah. It's about to start any minute. Just open up till they go. I see a lot of people here on my YouTube page from previous events. This event first happened 2 years ago at the Bharti Temple, Hindu temple in Metro Detroit, one of the nicer ones. This man here does community relations for the Bharti Temple. The woman here had previously done community relations for the Bharti Temple, Padma Kuppa, and she ran for state Congress, and she was helped out by the Jewish community. A friend of mine, Sam, in the Democratic Party, knocked on a bunch of doors. And this is Jeremy Moss. He's the state senator, former congressman of Southfield. He's been on my YouTube channel many times for lighting the Hanukkah menorah at the Southfield Chabad menorah lighting. Since he's the state representative, he's in the news. A Hillel Day School alumni, got Rabbi Lopatin. I participated in a few of these events with him now, the new rabbi from Kavya Torah. He now is in charge of the JCRC, which I've been going to for a while. I forget who, they had a younger man who was in charge for a while. But this event's going to start any moment. It was first done 2 years ago, and it's a conversation between the Hindu and Jewish community around our common festivals of light, as Diwali and Hanukkah are both referred to as the Festival of Light. So we have a nice crowd here in the synagogue here in Troy, if anyone's heard of Metro Detroit, anyone locally. So this is in Troy. I've interfaith with this congregation. The rabbi has done a Shabbaton with the downtown synagogue a few times. I'm forgetting his name, but he retired, and this rabbi became the rabbi of here. And this Rabbi Uva Aurora is also on my YouTube channel, some of my more popular videos at a concert at the downtown synagogue with Sean Zevitt and Andy Levin. So she was singing for that Hanukkah song, but after that she became the rabbi of the Shir Tikvah. The previous rabbi stepped down. So pretty nice congregation here. Never been here, but not a huge temple. They get their own property, parking lot. Troy is a very nice subdivision. It has a large Asian population. It never had a substantially large Jewish population, although some businesses like Sterling Capital, Gary Torguy's business is located out here. But the Jewish community didn't live here in large numbers. But there is a shul here, progressive shul. And so here we go.
Diwali Fireside Chat. I'm so grateful to the many of you who came out in tonight's rain and cold, and those of you who took the effort to be here tonight and think you're really in for quite a treat. We're so pleased to extend our warmest welcome to all of our community members at tonight's Hanukkuh Diwali Fireside Chat. Now, to clarify the nature of tonight's program, I am required to say, as a 501c3 nonprofit organization, neither Congregation Shir Tikvah, nor the Bharatiya Temple, nor any of the other sponsoring organizations associated with tonight's event endorse or oppose any candidate for public office. Choosing a life of public service. I skipped one thing. Tonight's main speakers, Hanukkuh and Jeremy Moss, have graciously volunteered their time to share with us not only their valuable expertise, but also their personal insights into how they handle the issues that they confront. Choosing a life of public service is an exalted calling. It is also a challenging one, requiring courage, grit, and determination. I'm deeply grateful to them, and I trust that all of you will join me in extending our guests the warmest welcome. our site partner, the Bharatiya Temple, for providing volunteers to help plan and staff tonight's program, including providing food, which I'm looking forward to. We are grateful to Sukla Doshi, who was on the panel, as well as to Nasi Sankagiri, for their efforts. Thanks also to the Jewish Community Relations Council American Jewish Committee, commonly referred to by its acronym, the JCRC AJC. We are excited to welcome their new Executive Director, Rabbi Lopatin, to tonight's event. And I believe it essential also extend our gratitude to Sam Eklender, who is the AJC's Community Relations Manager, and Alicia Chandler, who served as Interim Director of the AJC. They were part of the planning committee, and they also secured the press releases and flyers and publicity for tonight's event. I would like to introduce and thank tonight's moderator, friend Stella. Fred was also on our planning committee. Fred is the radio host of Common Threads out of Grand Rapids, and a member of the National Leadership Council of the Hindu American Foundation. Later tonight, he will be introducing tonight's main guests in greater detail. I would like to thank the volunteers of Congregation Shir Tikvah who contributed to tonight's event, starting with Michael Silverstein, who was on our planning committee, and Nancy Gross, and Ruth Zendel, who volunteered to provide tonight's post-event refreshments. And to any of you who I have failed to name but who contributed nevertheless to tonight's success, you share in it, and I hope that I have the opportunity to thank you personally by the end of the evening. And now, after we convene tonight's event with the call of the conch shell, we will hear brief explanations about the meaning of sacred light, especially as it's understood by the celebrations of Hanukkuh and Diwali, after which we will light the candles that I am lighting, these special Diwali and Hanukkuh candles. Following that, we will commence with our fireside chat. Tonight we have planned for there to be a 40-minute program where we get to hear from our special leaders, followed by 20 minutes of Q&A from you, the audience who have come out for tonight. Following the conclusion of tonight's event, there will be ample time to socialize and enjoy the special foods at our post-event reception. So if we could please invite the convening call, I'd like to invite up Vishal Chandu, who will blow the conch. To say a few words about the lights of Hanukkah. I will attempt to keep my comments extremely brief. But since tonight is really a gathering about the idea of bringing light into to dispel the darkness, it is fitting that we learn about the meaning of both the Hanukkah lights and the Diwali lights. So what is it that light, especially through the Hanukkah lights, symbolizes? I'm going to share the story of Hanukkah, how we light the candles of the menorah, and what we do with the light once we've lit it. The story of Hanukkah. Thousands of years ago, there was an ancient temple in the land of Jerusalem. And inside that temple there stood a menorah that looked similar to but not identical to this one, for it had a total of 7 lights. The lights of this menorah were always lit, a symbol of God's eternal presence. Then there came a dictator, and the temple was overrun, and many of its things inside of it destroyed. Among the things that was destroyed was the cache of sacred oil that was used to keep these lights lit all of the time. In fact, as the people coming in to clean things up after they had the privilege of getting to take back over the temple from the destroyers after they came back, they did a search, and they were only able to come up with 1 cruse of oil, which is an amount that can keep candles lit for exactly 1 day. The problem was it would take a total of 7 to 8 days to process enough oil that they could keep the lights of the menorah in the ancient temple lit. So it was a problem. The miracle of Hanukkah is that 1 cruse of oil, enough just to keep the lights lit for 1 day, lasted, in fact, for 8. That is the miracle of Hanukkah. One of the things that this goes to teach us is that God's presence and God's light are always with us, even when that feels threatened. On Hanukkah, we're reminded that 1 light dispels the darkness. That's all it takes. There's a particular way in which we light the lights of the Hanukkah menorah, and that is on the first night of Hanukkah we light 1 candle, on the second night we light 2, and so on, until by the 8th night of Hanukkah we see all 8 candles lit. Why is it that we start with lighting 1 and we end with lighting 8, when it could just as logically have started with 8 and gone down to 1? One reason is because, as the ancient sage Rabbi Hillel taught, we are only to increase or raise up in holiness. We do not decrease or lower it. Now, if you look at all of the candles in this menorah, you'll see that there's space for a 9th candle. And yet, I talk consistently about the 8 candles, so what's going on with that? This additional little candle is called the shamash. It's known to be the helper candle. It is not counted among the 8 here. The shamash, the helper, seems to have the lowliest of jobs, which is to say that of lighting the rest of the lights. Yet it is given the highest position on a traditional menorah, Hanukkah menorah, in order to honor it for its special role. This idea is consistent with the idea of servant leadership. A servant leader is a leader who shares power, who puts the needs of others first, and who helps people develop and perform at the highest of levels. The shamash is like the servant leader. We too, every one of us, can serve and become servant leaders. We do so when we shine our light and when we help others to shine theirs. What can be a light? Our voice can be a light. Our actions can be a light. The point is to be a light. So the third and final question, what is it that we do with a lit menorah, with a menorah once its lights are lit? There's a Jewish tradition that we display the lights of the Hanukkah menorah in a window. This tradition serves to teach us not to hide our light. Rather, it is important that we let our light shine out and dispel the darkness. I wish you all an early happy Hanukkah. This year, Hanukkah begins on Sunday, December 22nd. At this point, it is my honor to invite up Nasi Sankagiri to explain a little bit about the lights of Diwali.
Thank you, Rabbi. this sacred occasion. It is the junction of two great cultures, two great religions, celebrating two of their most important festivals. And thanks also to Rabbi Ara. Deepam is the traditional oil lamp, a representation you see here, a little ornate version for the festival occasion. Deepam plays a very, very important role in Hindu worship. Deepam Jyoti Param Brahmam, Deepam Sarvatamobham. Deepena Sadhyate Sarvam, Deepa Devata Namostate. Deepam itself is a manifestation of the divine. It dispels all darkness. And with the lighting of the lamp, with the lighting of the light, everything becomes possible. So we light the lamp at the beginning of any worship. And in the Hindu worship, whether it is a simple 5-minute home prayer, a daily prayer, or whether it is a very elaborate ritual, we always say, Brahma Karma Samarabhe. I am embarking on this journey to reach the Brahman, the divine. And lighting of the lamp to light that path of the spiritual journey is the first and most important step. Now we come to Diwali, or Deepavali, as they say, where we come from, Padma and I come from, in the south of India. India being such a big country and Hinduism being such a diverse religion, there are at least 4, if not more, stories of why Diwali came about. And the north, the south, the east, and west parts of India, if you kind of divide it the 4 ways, tell these stories and justify their own celebrations. But all agree on one thing. We all light up the entire house with hundreds of these diyas. Nowadays we use electric lamps, but lighting of the diyas. So what does this signify? The Yajurveda says, Deepam resides in our hearts. It describes Tasya Shikhaya Madhye Parama Atma Vyavastitaha Sa Brahma Sashivasa Harisendra Paramaswarat. The heart looks like a upside down lotus bud. At the tip of that heart is a spark, so tiny you're not able to see it. In the middle of that spark is a lamp burning eternally, and that lamp is the divine. That divine is within you. And the goal of this life is to reach that. And Diwali, that occurs on the new moon day of Ashwin Masa, opens a period of 1 month, which we are in right now. It's called the Kartika Masa. For all Hindus, it is a time of the most intense spiritual journey, most intense spiritual sadhana. Whatever spiritual practice you do during this 1 month benefits you tenfold, 100-fold than when you do any other time in the year. So, Deepavali is concentrating, it is opening the door, and lighting of these hundreds of lamps is, we are saying, I am lighting this lamp to start on my spiritual journey. Deepavali, literally and figuratively and religiously, is opening our spiritual door to dispel the darkness of ignorance. Thanks for your attention.
I'd like to invite up 2 individuals now to light our respective lights. Nadia Bengal from the Bharatiya Temple to light our Diwali lights. There you are. As well as Dan Kryza from our congregation, Shir, Tikvah, to light our Hanukkuh lights.
Thank you, Rabbi. Well, shalom and namaste. Thank you all for coming out, especially on a night like this. I'm curious, how many people were at the temple 2 years ago for something similar? So we have a few people. That's really wonderful. It was a great experience then, and I'm sure it's going to be wonderful tonight. We certainly have a different agenda, if you will, but it's great to have this gathering. I'm reminded of, in Grand Rapids, we did a night of Jewish and Hindu fellowship. We didn't connect with any of the holidays, but just to get the two communities together, we had it at the synagogue. And when I met with the rabbi there, we were sort of negotiating the night. What would take place? So we would do, it was going to be on a Saturday night, so they do Havdalah, then a very brief Hindu puja, and there'd be Israeli folk dancing, and there would be Indian dancing, and explanations of both religions. And then we got to the food. And he was very adamant. He says, there will be no Jewish food at this event. He said, why? He said, I want Jews to come. So there was only Indian food. Which reminds me of another thing. At the Hindu American Foundation, I was in Washington, D.C. doing advocacy work, and I found myself in the office of a member of the House of Representatives from Ohio who was Jewish. And I didn't get a chance to meet with her, but I got a chance to meet with her senior aide, and she was Jewish. And so she was asking me, well, she'd never heard of the Hindu American Foundation. She said, well, what is the mission of the Hindu American Foundation? I said, well, among other things, one of our goals is to replace Chinese restaurants with Indian restaurants as the go-to place for the Jews on Christmas. That's what we're going to try to do. But anyway, we're here to talk about faith and religion tonight. And it's interesting because normally in the United States, when you hear the phrase faith and religion, the mind almost always goes to Christian office holders, Christian public servants, right? Faith and politics, religion and politics. And I think that I believe it was Padma, I could be wrong, who came up with this thing, whoever the committee was, the idea that we're going to talk about religion and politics, how faith and practice shape who we are, and in particular, how faith and spiritual practice shape the people who serve us in elected office, I think it is really, really inspiring. Because faith and religious practice inspire all of us who identify with a particular tradition. And clearly, people who are our elected officials are certainly no different. Some people talk about it a little bit more than others. Some people actually talk about it way too much. But I think tonight we're going to learn some things, and hopefully we're going to be inspired to be public servants, not necessarily elected public servants, but to work towards the kind of country and the kind of community that we all hope for. So with us tonight is Padma Kuppa, and she is in the legislature representing the 41st district, which includes all of Clawson and Troy. Completely ungerrymandered, impressive young lady. And also Jeremy Moss, he's with the 11th district, and he represents southern Oakland County. So I want to welcome you both here, and we'll start with some questions. So, Jeremy, let me start with you. The question is, talk about your journey from, now, you were born a Jew, you maintain your Jewishness. So when I say your journey, I'm not talking about, going from one religion to another, but we all have a spiritual journey if we're serious about our religion, from childhood to adulthood. So if you would talk about that, and then how that ended up inspiring you to do what you're doing now with the state legislature.
Yeah, that's a wonderful start to the question. I first have to just say, you have the perfect voice for radio. Smooth baritone. I'm going to start listening to your program from now on. So I'm the only Jewish member of the Michigan State Senate, and for the last 4 years prior to my election to the state senate, there was no Jewish member of the Michigan State Senate. And out of 110 legislators in the House and 38 legislators in the Senate, 148 legislators total, there are only 3 of us in the entire legislature. Probably about a decade and a half ago, there might have been about 10. So we're down to 3. In fact, we've increased in numbers. We're only me and Robert Wittenberg in the State House this last session. But I grew up in a conservative Jewish household. Not conservative politically, but kind of middle of the road. We have different levels of observance in Judaism, and I kind of fit in that middle of observance, a stricter reading of the Torah, and grew up going to synagogue with my grandparents every Saturday, and of course going to synagogue on high holy days. And grew up in a kosher household where we followed the dietary restrictions inside the household. Went to a Jewish school from kindergarten through 8th grade. 2 of my classmates from Hillel Day School are here. And so that level of education was not just, secular. Obviously, there's a religious component to it, teaching us Torah, teaching us how to speak Hebrew, teaching us about cultural Jewish history. I went to a summer camp that was affiliated with the Jewish community. I went to Michigan State and was very affiliated with Hillel, which is the Jewish campus organization. It's just to say I'm really Jewish. My religion is very important to me, and it certainly guides me, and the core principles that my parents raised me with and was raised in the synagogue with guide me, tikkun olam, taking care of the world, making sure that you're giving back to others as well. Those are core tenets, I think, that obviously everybody here, follows, and specifically a tenet of the Jewish religion, to make sure that we take care of the least of us, to make sure that, tzedakah is this concept of giving back, giving even defines in the Torah percentages of your income to give back into charity. And so, going into public office kind of really, in my mind, is in line with that. Giving back, making sure that I'm serving my neighbors, making sure that I'm adequately representing their values, advocating on their behalf, taking the brunt of some of the criticism on their behalf. So it's not always glamorous to be the only Jewish senator. I have to represent a community even beyond my district. Sometimes it's very isolating to be the only Jewish voice there. Honestly, without getting too political, but we are politicians. I think that it's been very different to be Jewish in a very public way over the last 3 years than it has been for my first 30 years. I'm 33, and so that defining line of my first 3 decades, I've seen more anti-Semitism in the last 3 years than my first 3 decades, especially learning the lessons of the Holocaust growing up. It was painted to us, of course, we knew Holocaust survivors. We actually had a project in our school where we had to interview a Holocaust survivor because it was impressed upon us that we would be the last generation to intimately know Holocaust survivors. But it was painted very much so as a part of our history, anti-Semitism as a part of our history, whereas now it's very much a part of our present. And so it's only recommitted me and renewed my efforts to make sure that we have a voice that we're not shy about who we are, that we don't hide who we are, that we are very present. And I think that is very tied in with the holiday of Hanukkah. There are certain Jewish holidays that are very insulated. You know, we go into the synagogue and close the doors. We go into our families and we eat dinner and we close the doors. Hanukkah, as was mentioned, is a very public holiday. The menorah is on display. The menorah is on display in the window for others to see. We have very public menorah lightings, on different public spaces, and I think that's how I try to express myself as a Jewish legislator. I want to be very public with my core values, and want to adequately represent them and represent the Jewish people, as well as the other people in my district in the state legislature. And so that's. I think this is a very fitting holiday to have this conversation around.
Wonderful. Padma, so obviously you grew up Hindu with the values that were instilled by your parents, who fortunately are here tonight from India, which is kind of exciting. So talk about the journey from the childhood expression of Hinduism that you first became familiar with, all the way to where you are right now. How inspired?
Sure. I do want to just give a shout out to having lunch with Alicia Chandler. For those of you who know her, when Alicia and I meet for lunch, ideas happen. And we're very grateful for all of the people that made the idea that we had over lunch a reality. She and I started the first Hanukkah Diwali event when my son was still in high school. The last one I did in Troy for the Hindu American Foundation, because that was where it started, was at the Fireside Temple 2 years ago. So I'm really honored to be here with all of you here in Congregation Shir Tikvah with Rabbi Doooovid here, because he is one of the people that helped me find my voice, along with Michael and many others in the Jewish community. So let me talk about voice. So I grew up in Long Island. My parents came as foreign students to the United States. First my father, then my mother. My mother decided also to do a PhD. And so I grew up in what we call matzo pizza land. And I knew, in fact, the facts of life, because my mom was a shy Indian woman, did not know how to explain. So one of the people who helped her explain the birds and the bees to me was my Auntie Barbara. The man who taught me chess was my Uncle David. And so I grew up with a very eclectic sense of religion, because back in the 70s, there were no temples. There was no Hindu community. In fact, I remember going into the State University of New York at Stony Brook, where my parents were, going into the student union to watch a Hindi movie. And all I remember is like very violent, a lot of shooting, because that's what movies in the 70s that were made in Bollywood were like. And I just was very averse to violence. And so I really did not associate Hinduism with something public. It was something very private. It was something my mother did through her bhakti, through her devotion in the home. It was the knowledge and the jnana, the yoga of wisdom that my father talked about, and the philosophy that he enriched my life with. And then when I was 15, when we moved to India, I was kicking and screaming, I will tell you, and my parents know how upset I was about moving. I knew that they were doing it because they were interested in serving the country they are from. Because in the Hindu way of life, the one thing that I learned was there are 4 pursuits: dharma, artha, karma, moksha. We don't think too much about moksha because it's what happens when you die. But dharma is the first sort of commandment, or the first focus of a human life, which is to do justice, to do good in the world. And so they choose to do good by living in India amongst the people that they grew up with. But I didn't feel that comfort level, and so I came back to go to graduate school here and eventually made my life in Michigan. But those 7 years that I lived as a teenager and college student in India really shaped my understanding of Hinduism in a more nuanced way. Because here I had been a minority. It was something private. Whereas in India, you were Hindu publicly. It wasn't even something you had to say. You learned how to be Hindu through bus that I shared with a young Muslim student who was going to high school. We took a bus from where we lived in a place called Padma in Hyderabad, all the way to the central part of the city. And she went to one school, I went to one school. She was Muslim. Her father was a math professor, where my father was an English professor. And we would go to each other's houses for holidays. And to me, it didn't, the pluralism that is essential to being Hindu, ekam sat vigraha bahudha vadanti, that the wise have, there's one truth, but the wise call it by many names, which means that we find other religions out. That shaped me, that living in India, that experience in India, being accepted for who I was, that because I had a dot on my head and I had oiled hair with 2 little braids that I went to school with, and I was kind of weird, it didn't matter. I wasn't weird in India. I was one of everybody. And so that really shaped my feeling pride in being Hindu. And so that really shaped how I lived my life as a mother, because I wanted my children to feel that same pride. When we moved here to Michigan, I joined the Bharatiya Temple because I wanted my children to walk into a space and feel that they were accepted for being Hindu, because I had not really felt that when I was growing up. And so, so my last 20 years living in Michigan have been to make sure that as a mother, I made sure that what I experienced in my growing years, that my children didn't have the same sort of challenges. But anyone who's a parent knows your children are going to find something to fault with what you did. But anyway, but yeah, so that's kind of what shaped me into public office. And I would say even further that I ran for office very reluctantly. I had been asked to run many, many times for different offices, and I didn't want it to be public because when I started the Detroit Interfaith Group in 2005 with several members of this congregation and several members of the Detroit community, over being excluded from a National Day prayer event, I knew that my family was not thrilled with being put in the public space. And so running for office was going to expose them to the public space even further. But I realized that if I wanted to share my values of valuing education, I needed to run for office and stand for education for all children, because that's really one of the core things that my parents have supported: orphanages or children in need. My mom's mom, they have a family foundation on my mother's side of the family that helps young people who need help to get an education, monetary and guidance even. And so it's one of the things that always stayed with me is that education is the one thing that no one can take away from you. And this is one of those lunches I had with a name that might be familiar to some of you, Carrie Alterman. And she and I shared that how, and that actually spurred me to write a column or a blog on education once. But just the fact that education is such a critical component, and that's why I came to public office, because I knew that education is a core value for me as a Hindu.
And I have to say, I've known Padma for several years now, and on several occasions we went down to Washington, D.C. On behalf of the Hindu American Foundation for what we call D.C. Days, this advocacy. I mentioned being in the office of the representative from Ohio, and I would see Padma sitting across the table from senators and House members and senior aides, and the few of us who were at the table with Padma, we just look at her and go, it is your dharma. Like in Star Wars, it is your destiny. We just figured that if she didn't run for some elected office, that something was wrong with the universe. So, Jeremy, if you can start this next question. Where do your values as a Jew align with democratic values? And where might there be room for improvement?
That's a really, that's a question that I think Jews are struggling with right now. I think all of my values align with being a Democrat, for being Jewish. this concept to make sure that we are taking care, there's a social safety net for people, I think is a very Jewish concept. The strength of education is also a very Jewish concept as well. Social activism is a very Jewish concept. Vocalizing, protests, being very outward, being very expressive is a very Jewish concept. And so the only thing that is tough is the politicization of Israel. And that's where I think every core tenet aligns with the Democratic Party. And even my support of a safe and secure Israel does align with the Democratic Party. But there are those on the opposing party who feel that they are stronger on security for Israel, therefore we should give up all of our other tenets, all the other core values we have, and align with them as well. Supporting Israel is very important to me as a Jew, period. Every other thing I just said is equally as important to me as a Jew, period. Which is why really my core tenets align on the more progressive liberal end. And you see, I think that in the community at large, we're kind of a 75-25% split between Democrats and Republicans. And so really, you know, my core values politically are certainly shaped by my Jewish upbringing. That's where my politics align.
So let's say I'm in your district and I am right of center on the subject of Israel. Mm-hmm. Why would I care what you in the state government think about those matters?
Because, you know what, honestly, there's so much room for economic opportunity with the state of Israel, and right now our governor, currently, right now, is on an economic mission to Israel. Several House members, including the Speaker of the House, and our House Democratic leader, and other state senators are on an economic mission in Israel as well. And so the governor has made several different announcements about economic partnerships in Israel. This is a Democratic governor who sees these opportunities. And so if you're right of center, I truly believe that on Israel, I truly believe that our core values are more aligned with progressive values. And even if you have consternation about how Israel has been politicized over the last several years, you have a Democratic governor right now on an economic trade mission in Israel. Seeing that there's a very much room for partnership to grow between the state of Michigan and the state of Israel.
And at the same time, though, you have nothing to do with how much military aid Israel gets,
Right.
Any assistance such as that.
Right. But honestly, you know, we certainly each year have a legislative mission for legislators as well. As I mentioned, I went this past summer, I've gone previous summers to Israel with other legislators. Because while Michigan has a very limited say on defense spending, there's a lot we can learn from a lot of the entrepreneurial startups that Israel fosters, and apply those lessons here in Michigan as well. So, you know, while DC has its own, issues with national security and international security when it comes to Israel, there's still a lot of room for that to grow here domestically, here in the state of Michigan, on what we can bring back and what economic lessons we can learn here. And I don't think that has a partisan affiliation, and certainly shouldn't have a partisan affiliation.
Thank you. Padma, same question. How your values align with being a Democrat, and where there's room for improvement.
So I'm very proud to be a Democrat, because I think, like Jeremy said, not only do we value education and several of the other things he mentioned, also the environment. I think that I belong to a party that understands that there is an impact by human behavior to our natural resources, and they're limited. I'll tell you one of the things that any dancer who does a sacred dance within the tradition of Natyam, Kuchipuri, Kathak, I can name others, but they all ask forgiveness before they dance for the mistakes and for stamping on motherhood. We have an organization in the community that is a response to climate change called the Bhumi Project. Bhumi is Mother Earth. So when we consider Earth sacred, we must enact policy that considers Earth valuable and its resources limited. I think as a Democrat, I'm very proud of our environmental stances and our stances on natural resources. Another thing I think that's really important to me, and women will understand this, we want equal pay for equal work. Within the Hindu tradition, we have different ways of slicing and dicing. As Nancy said earlier, the Hindu spectrum is so diverse. But there is the Shakti, the energy of the woman, the feminine divine. And so the fact that women offer a lot to our society, that we should give them equal pay for equal work, those are things that we embrace within the Democratic Party, and I'm very proud to say that the Progressive Women's Caucus, I am the co-chair of the Equal Pay Task Force, and many other women's issues, empowering women economically, but also empowering them to make decisions about their own bodies and their health care. I think those are things that align with being a Democrat. And then I will say that there are challenges for me because while the relationship between being Hindu and being of Indian origin are not the same as it is being Jewish and being connected to Israel, because India specifically chose, unlike Pakistan or Bangladesh, India chose to be a secular nation. And so when we talk about India, in fact, when I first started doing interfaith dialogue, somebody accused me actually, a person of Indian origin, of Muslim faith, accused me of being a Hindu nationalist. And I had to go home to my husband and say, what is a Hindu nationalist? Because I didn't know. I wasn't involved in politics. I was always one of those activists. I didn't care which side you were on. I wanted what I needed, whether it was funding for schools or stop giving money to Pakistan for military purposes so that they could go bomb India and terrorize India. I didn't want that because I have family, I have friends who are from Kashmir. I have family and friends who had lost in Kashmir in 88, 89 when the Hindu genocide happened, when the exodus happened. And so when people in the Democratic Party are not sensitive to the idea that this is what I call my punya bhumi, my karma bhumi, where I work. This is where I take action. My punya bhumi, my spiritual homeland, is India. And so for me, this is sacred because I live here. But that is sacred not only because I was born there, but because that is where the Hindu spiritual sacred spaces all are. That is an important thing for me. And so when we as a nation don't value India as a partner, as a democracy, and we hold it in less esteem than some of its neighbors who are perpetrating terror, I have a problem. And in fact, I also have a problem. One of the presidential candidates, without realizing that it was Diwali, invited me to join him for a rally. You're Jewish, you should know. Diwali is important to me. You're a minority faith person. I'm a minority faith person. Respect my faith and not invite me to a rally on Diwali. So I have
Back to you for just a second, Jeremy. In being Jewish and having a strong affinity for Israel as well as your values, do you get it from both the left and the right as far as criticism? I understand that's a thing now.
How do the Jews in here feel about that? Yes, definitely. I'm trying to decide how far I want to go here. When people tweet something, right? When people on the left tweet something and it goes a little viral, or when people on the right tweet something and it goes a little viral, my reaction is never good enough. And so I get hit from the left, I get hit from the right. That somehow, I wasn't forceful in defending Israel enough, or I wasn't as vocal in in some of the disagreements I have with the current administration overseas enough. And so it is tough, and it really puts us in a very difficult position as Jews. But it just goes back to my prior point that Israel has been politicized, and Israel it has been politicized in a way that it's this relationship that I think the current president is exploiting with Israel. I don't know that Jews are gaining in the end. I think that it's an exploitive relationship that doesn't necessarily seek to assist Jews in the end of whatever we're trying to accomplish here. I think it's more to rile up the president's base here back home, which some of whom don't have a particular affinity with the Jewish community anyway. And so that's why I personally get frustrated. Are there criticisms of Netanyahu? Absolutely. He's just been indicted today, I think. This is the news that came out there. Are there things of his border security that caused me trouble? No question about it. But at the same time, I don't know that I'm very much caught in a position of, you want to defend Israel's right to security and safety and as the only democracy in that region. And sure, I can pass criticism of the administration, but it doesn't necessarily mean that my criticism is anti-Israel. However, there are voices in the criticism that are certainly anti-Israel. And so I have to draw a line too to disaffiliate myself with that. So the last few years have been very agitating, uncomfortable, and very much I feel like I'm in a no-win situation some of the time.
Talk about, back to Padma, and then Jeremy, you can answer this too. Tell me about the relationships you have with your colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Are you the Hindu representative? Are you the Jew? Oh, we can ask Padma, we can ask Jeremy this question, or do you feel sometimes that the dominant Christian culture is overwhelming?
I'm going to take that first, sorry.
Please do.
I have to say that I am the first Hindu in the legislature, and openly so. And recently, on Diwali, I introduced the Diwali resolution, and we've been doing this at HAF. They helped me figure out how to do it, and we did it with Diane Slavens, was the first state rep that introduced the Diwali resolution a few years ago. This is my first time on the House floor. It was also the day that the governor held a reception in her home for Diwali. And I got up and I did a floor speech. And I'll tell you how many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle came up to me and said, that was a really good floor speech. And then remember I told you about my Uncle David, who lives in Israel? He sent me a message, because somehow somebody sent it to him, and he said my floor speech was phenomenal. So to me, I think that our governor said it at the State of the State on February 12th. I always believed in pluralism, because to me that was the essence of being Hindu, was that we accept people, and actually there's a rabbi named Brad Hirschfeld, some of you will know. He said to me, theologically, Hindus and Jews are very similar, because we have this, that we don't think somebody else is bad or wrong or excluded because they don't believe the same as us. And so this idea of pluralism, this idea that we can take things from different perspectives, that's what I wanted in the amendment for the legislature. It wasn't about left or right. I want to be able to see things from someone else's perspective, but some days it's really hard. And I am so thankful. And some days it's hard because of issues related to India. Some days it's issues related to the invocation. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, session starts with invocation. And sometimes my colleagues on my side of the aisle bring a person one religion's personal thing. And I think that humility is something all of us have and all of us need to have. I don't always know that I have the right answer. That's why I ask all my constituents to come and tell me what's on their mind. So I think this is one of the challenges that I have, is that I'm really more interested in hearing from different perspectives and making a good decision as a legislator. And I also don't believe that any extreme viewpoint is where we are as people, whether it's House District 41, the state of Michigan, or the United States of America.
You just opened up a lot, because there's so much I agree with you on there, so much. I don't even know where to begin, but honestly, so the question is, how do am I the Jewish legislator? Yes, but obviously, that I'm not pegged into a corner. I have a lot more interests outside of just, things that are driven by my religious values. But certainly, and especially in Michigan, where the Jewish community is concentrated in Oakland County primarily, there will be legislators who do not have active Jewish communities in their district, and so I'm probably their first and maybe even their only interaction with a Jewish person on a regular basis. And so when you get further out to up north Michigan, I think the biggest affiliation with the Jewish community is this support for the state of Israel. You get a little bit further north, it's a little bit more conservative, and I think that there's kind of this affinity in Christian communities with the state of Israel, which I welcome. But when you kind of scratch below the surface a little bit, and they'll say, well, Jeremy, we really support Israel. I go, Israel's a country with universal health care. Oh. Well, Israel's a country with limited to no college cost or debt for Israeli students. Well, Israel is far more progressive on LGBT rights than the state of Michigan. So what is it about Israel that is so exciting to people? And
If
so,
you want Jesus to come back.
exactly. And so that's kind of where, as the Jewish legislator, I really try and get a little bit deeper into Israeli values, a little bit deeper into Jewish values, and try to educate as much as possible. And I've always told all of my colleagues, there's no question that is a dumb question. If you don't know, then it's not a dumb question. And so I've educated a lot of my colleagues on Jewish customs, Jewish traditions. I have spoken up so many times on things that, we were talking earlier about how the secular calendar is still not favorable to minority religions. So I'm the first person that the floor leader goes to at the start of every session to let them know which Jewish holidays they can't schedule session over. I'm happy to play that role, because it's not just about me as the only Jewish senator. There's Jewish staffers, there's Jewish civil servants who are impacted by a calendar that is not respectful to minority religion. And so I have a great amount of pride in playing that role. But they also, definitely notice when things do afflict me as the only Jewish legislator. Padma mentioned the invocation in the House. We have the invocation in the Senate. It is November 21st. I have sat down twice during the invocation, because it was not a prayer that was inclusive of me. We are used to, as minority religions, I think we are very much used to others feeling that this is more of a Christian nation than anything else. And so a majority of our prayers end in Jesus' name, amen. In fact, there was a time in the House where I sat here, Andy Shore, who's now the mayor of Lansing, who's also Jewish, sat close to me, and Robert Wittenberg sat a little bit further down. We called it the shtetl. Sat on the floor. And so I took a tally of every invocation that was really non-denominational, and there were very few of them. And there were a lot more that were certainly Christian prayers. We had a prayer that was just outlandish in the Senate back in May. It was proselytizing. It was a call and response. I love Jesus. I love Jesus. Jesus is my Lord. Jesus is my Lord. And this is how I start every day of my work in state government. And so we've changed some rules. You have to submit your prayer ahead of time. That was something that was a big lift, but we made happen. But, I would tell you one thing. There was a prayer just 2 weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago on a Thursday. And one of the things that was mentioned in the prayer was, Christian institutions like traditional marriage. I said, okay, well, this prayer is not for me. So I sat down, and one of my colleagues from the northwest part of Michigan, far out there, sits on the other side of the aisle as me. I'm sure there are very few Jewish people in his district. I'm sure that he does not interact with the Jewish community on a daily basis. And it was on Thursday, and so the next Tuesday he comes up to me and he goes, Jeremy, I noticed you sat down during that prayer, and I thought he was going to say, what was wrong with me, I should have just tolerated it. And he goes, I'm really proud that you did that. He said that was not an inclusive prayer, and we shouldn't have to start the day here, praying in a way that is exclusive to others. And so I think by earning a little bit of trust with my non-Jewish colleagues, by letting them know, you can ask me any question. I'm open to explanation. I'm open to sharing. I'm open to giving you more knowledge about my religion. Actually, it does go both ways. That when I'm offended, they understand it too. And so that was a very meaningful moment for me. And I hope that we can change this invocation culture. You and I will work on this, because there's nothing more frustrating than that. I'm already driving an hour up to Lansing. I'm already probably late, so I'm rushing in, and then I have to start my day in the Senate at church.
So for me, I just want to add on to that. So for me, I come from a whole, strong core understanding in my community that we are interfaith. We have started an interfaith group here that has, had ripple effect that's taught at Harvard. In fact, Rabbi Ora and I met, and she said to me, when I was in seminary, they taught the case study about you and the Troy Interfaith Group. And so we have had this amazing, pluralistic, inclusive culture in my district. And I go to Lansing. So it's really, I need to be in my district more. And I tell people, I go out and about, and I'm like, you're so much more in the community. I need to be, because when I go up there, I miss my people here.
And there's a prayer group. There's a legislative prayer group that meets Thursday mornings. And I've been invited a few times, but on one of the emails, it was specific. It was join us in Christian prayer. And it was it's very exclusive. And if you don't flag these things, there is not even an acknowledgement that there's an issue there. And so that's why I speak up.
So I'll say in the House prayer practice, it is different from the Senate one. Our co-chair, John Holy and John Riley, are the ones. They asked me to give the invocation prayer. I was so nervous the first time, but I did. And then another time I got to give it. So they've asked me, so they've been very nice, and I think that very receptive. I usually start with something like Asatoma Satkamaya for the Hindus and the Buddhists, about leading me from darkness to light. And so really, as the essential prayers in the Hindu tradition that talk about light. And so I felt very welcome in that.
And that's encouraging to hear, because it was the House prayer group about 4 years ago that had this issue of exclusivity. And I'm very glad that there's enough people that are pushing and representing other religious values, or other religions, not religious values, but other religions that are now included in that. So, progress.
And I think also I found in the 15 years I've been interfaith, you let the other person express their concerns, and then you express yours. And it always works better for me when I do that. Let's hear what your challenges are, and then we have more space for that.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the current controversy that we're facing. So for the last 4 or 5 years that I've been in the legislature, and then beyond that, this time of year they put up a holiday tree on the Capitol lawn. It is a beautiful tree. Your taxpayer dollars helped to establish it. It's 60 feet tall. Any other religious symbol this time of year on the front lawn has call, disassembled every night and reassembled every morning with volunteers. And so for the last several years, me and the shtetl, we were saying, this is a Christmas tree. Well, it's a holiday, it's a non-denominational holiday tree. So I said, well, I would like to put up a non-denominational holiday candelabra. And so this recently, and I don't know when they've changed the name of it, but recently they are calling it now a Christmas tree. The state of Michigan Capitol Facebook page is hailing the establishment of the Christmas tree, and Michigan Senate Republican Twitter is talking about the Christmas tree is going up. I'm not trying to take down the Christmas tree. However, I put forward a resolution that the menorah should not have any restrictions to it, arbitrary restrictions, 4 feet tall, has to be disassembled every night, has to be reassembled every morning. As I said, tomorrow, the mayor of Lansing, who is Jewish, is going to officially light the Christmas tree in Lansing, which is on the front lawn of the state capitol, and he has asked to light a menorah at the same time. So we put forward this resolution, and our resolution was denied. We were denied by the other side of the aisle from us, to put up a menorah with no restrictions, similar to the Christmas tree. So you can make so much progress and explain, and then, you know, it's unfortunate that freedom of religion really is freedom of one religion. And so we're still pushing. We got now another month or so to get this menorah up.
I'm just curious, when you were working for that resolution, was there actual debate in the Senate?
So we knew we were introducing it on a state-specific. It was the last day that the House and the Senate were both in session before we were on break before the Christmas tree lighting in Lansing. So I knew it was a last-minute request. So I went to the leadership in the House. I went to the leadership in the Senate. They were receptive to it. Didn't see kind of the huge problems. Was wondering, was this going to lead to, you know, other religious items being placed in the front lawn? I said, then take up those resolutions as well. My resolution is about the menorah on this specific holiday. The next morning, I read in the newspaper, the local Lansing Daily that comes out that talks about capital items, that our resolution was denied. No explanation. You know, we worked it. We had conversations. Because that would lead to a slippery slope. But the Christmas tree, again, I'm not trying to take down the Christmas tree, but the Christmas tree is there. It's beautiful. It's a Christmas tree. But I was told that the Christmas tree is more of a secular tree than the menorah. How many of you have Christmas trees in your home during the holidays? I don't. So it's kind of, again, you have to penetrate this overwhelming assumption that default values in this state are only Christian values. And you have to kind of break that down only to say that there are other religions and customs here in the state of Michigan that are in addition to Christian values. But we have been told pretty much officially that because the Christmas tree is secular and does not have a religious affiliation to it, that will stay.
So some of the people here will remember when we were excluded from the National Day of Prayer that had been happening for 10 years in the city of Troy on the steps of City Hall. We had to go up and offer public comment about why we objected, because some of us did object. And I went up there and I said, you know, Christ was inclusive, not being very Christ-like. And so I don't know if Rabbi Arnie or Michael remember, but that to me is trying to push that inclusion, right, and act on the idea that all religions don't want to leave anybody out, that we want to protect the vulnerable. Because democracy, as Gandhi said, democracy works best when the weak or the minorities have the vulnerable, have the same voice as the strong.
Very quickly, Rabbi, I did a really lousy job of timing this. Give us a countdown. How many more minutes do we have for Q&A here?
I think for the public part of the Q&A, now is probably a good time to shift into that.
How much time for Q&A?
Want to say 10 to 15 minutes?
10 to 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 10 to 15 minutes.
All right.
We can get into some fun stuff here.
Let's do it.
By the way, I forget. Talking about the location. Where's can you maybe give a Oh yeah.
Good act.
There we go. Actually, what was interesting is I get up there and giving my invocation, which Jeremy you would have loved. I promise you. It was inclusive as all get out.
Those are the best invocations.
Yes. And I look and I see one side of the aisle completely empty, and the other side of the aisle had live human beings there. And during the prayer, it didn't even occur to me, like, oh yeah, that's right. They always talk about the other side of the aisle, so that must be the Republican side of the aisle, and nobody's here to see me. And I immediately thought, oh, they didn't want to see a pagan give a prayer. And I was told later on by Democrats, no, that is not why you didn't see Republicans. They were in cloture, I believe. There was a genuine reason why they weren't there. But it was very rewarding because as I was escorted out by the chief of police, which is our version of the sergeant at arms, and he said, as we were walking out, when you were talking, I felt the Spirit of the Lord in this room. Okay, it was worth the drive to Lansing.
That's true.
David LeGrand, he's my
Wonderful.
representative.
Wonderful.
Yeah. I didn't know Jim, but he came through. It was really good. So let's talk about what plans do you think you have? For instance, we're talking about
Q&A.
Yeah. Oh, okay, let's have Q&A.
Just a comment for Jeremy. I was in the Supreme Court when there was an argument, when the Chabad argued that the menorah was a universal symbol. And the Supreme Court, there's a Supreme Court decision.
Cincinnati.
Pittsburgh, I think.
Was it? Okay.
Look on something in the reindeer. Which argued that essentially that it was a secular symbol as much as the Christmas tree. So that argument is, all they have to do is refer to the U.S. Supreme Court decision on that.
I will be happy for anyone to engage in a lawsuit.
Good name.
No, the Chabad of Lansing is the group that actually puts up the 4-foot menorah. And they put it up every morning and they take it down every night because it can't stay up overnight. And they had, in fact, it was just over 4 feet and they had to saw off the base of it in order for it to be 4 feet. And they sent us the court case. I have it in my email, and we're thinking about what we're going to do next.
Yes.
Okay, you have to really be careful what you wish for, however, because when I was working for the organized Jewish community, I got involved with Detroit Wayne County Building Authority, which put a creche in front of the city county building every year, and I made the argument against it, and I was actually bolstered in my argument by the fact that a group of neo-Nazis came forward and said that because the city of Detroit and Wayne County allowed a religious figure to be displayed on public property, they wanted their religious figure, Adolf Hitler, to be displayed at that time. And all of a sudden, it didn't seem like such a great idea to have a creche up there, and the city county building authority banished the creche, at least to a church nearby that had a very public display space, and everybody was happy. It worked out great. So.
And I'm very cognizant of that, but the tree has stood stood there, and the tree has existed for as long as I've been in the legislature. So, you know, I fully am aware of that, but the tree isn't going anywhere. And so just the notion that our tiny little menorah, you know, it doesn't get the same rights and privileges as the tree is pretty problematic.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm a local Jew. I consider myself a Hindu, although I still keep my Jewish practices. And I think, as opposed to Judaism, like Hinduism's new demographics are growing, keeps on spreading. You know, new temples are being built, and maybe the Jewish community, our population, has you know, it's slowly dwindling. We have
No, it's increasing in America.
well, I mean, in Metro Detroit, our numbers have declined, like the number of synagogues. Well, you could discuss the demographics, but I think the interesting that Hinduism is kind of this like growing, vibrant religion that keeps on spreading, you know, across Michigan. Although a lot of the, you know, the issues of being a minority in America are the same.
I would actually say without data that I wouldn't agree that the Hindu community is necessarily growing. I think that we have more immigrants from India who are building more temples. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Hindu community is growing. It just means that people are self-segregating into more specific denominations or sampradayas and specific deities. So people who used to be part of one large, more broader,
ecumenical temples.
right, they've now become more single deity temples. And so it's not that they're growing, I think it's just the number of temples is growing.
All growth, yeah. Yes, you.
Tomorrow morning, I'm going to be at a meeting at the Alzheimer's Association over in Southfield. I think there's some federal legislators will be there. But so my question tonight is, how does Hinduism and Judaism inform the treatment of the elderly and in general? I mean, how does it tilt, or which way does it go for, you know, the elderly? Not necessarily the dementias with the Alzheimer's, just in general. How does Hinduism and Judaism think about the treatment of the elderly?
Yeah, I mean, there are more than one rabbi here, so I know that they probably can cite specifically from the Torah, but I mean, that is, at least culturally, it's of the utmost importance. Family is of the utmost importance in Judaism. You know, my family dinners are not just with mom, dad, sister. They're with, you know, the fourth cousin twice removed, and that person's, you know, niece and their dog and whatever. I mean, family is of the utmost central focus in Judaism, and that, of course, includes the close relationship with those in our community who are our elders. And so, especially, maybe less so on the religious side and more so on the cultural side, we in the Jewish Federation have a lot of support services for those who are elderly, are ill, are sick. We do a lot to complement some of government programs to ensure that we have programs as well within our own community to support, as I said before, most vulnerable populations, the underemployed and unemployed, the physically and mentally challenged, the elderly, and those who are otherwise limited in their mobility. And so we as a community have stepped up, you know, to certainly provide for a lot of programming to support the elders within our community.
I would say, I have to actually give a little bit of context to this. I think that for the Hindu community, because they've grown up largely in a non-minority condition, but they also have been first by the Mughals, then by the British and the Portuguese colonized and missionized and converted. They don't necessarily have a strong advocacy voice. I think the Jewish community is very fortunate for the fact that the misfortune of being a minority and always being under duress, you have developed many, many advocacy and service-based groups to support not only the Jewish community, but the broader community as well. And so the Hindu community is still a very new immigrant community in this country. we're still developing those things, but they do exist, and I will say that because of my concern for the vulnerable, which comes from, my wanting to do dharma, my first bill is about somebody who had Down syndrome, who had a sexual predator, and that was a bill that just kind of like leaped out at me that I needed to take that bill on. Because it could have a vulnerable adult as anybody over 18, and there's sexual online predators that are making them victims, and that was the first bill I took up. So I think that it's really important. Culturally, and I actually was involved with an organization in New York that a family friend of ours started called India Home, which, because as we age and our children are far away, and also as they go to work, people are left home alone, and so they develop Alzheimer's and dementia more quickly. And so there's an organization that was started basically to allow people to get together so that they had human interaction, because it's really important. And so I support organizations like that as well.
Good question.
Yes, I want to first thank you both. I've had the pleasure to get to know both of you over the past, months, and it's so great to, in the sort of turbulent political times that we live in, to have this sort of event sort of flies in the face of the narrative, the national narrative that we see. So I think it's an amazing thing that we're doing tonight. One thing that I sometimes struggle with is someone, my mom always told me growing up, don't talk religion, don't talk politics, and I disobey both of those and do it together, so, as do both of you. And I want to talk about, or sort of ask you sort of, how do you balance, both you, as Jeremy's being Jewish and Padma being Hindu, deeply connected to, as we've talked about, Israel and India, sort of balance, that concern politically with also, we have nowadays sort of these sort of smear attempts particularly against immigrant communities, talking about, they have dual loyalties. We just saw last week with Lieutenant Colonel Bindman testifying before Congress, and there were some smears against him that had dual loyalties with Ukraine, and that has very, pernicious undertones, anti-Semitic, Indophobic. So, I want to get a sense of how do you balance, talking about these issues that are so important to, you as people of faith, as people, of diaspora communities, while also, maintaining that, we are patriotic Michiganders and Americans and politicians, leaders in the community.
I would say they could ask my parents. I actually always talk to my kids about this, because I'm a naturalized citizen. Anyone who's born here doesn't have to stay. They will give up their residence for this country. Those of us who are naturalized do.
Right.
It's very meaningful to remind my children that.
Right.
I swore that I would defend this country with my life. They do. It was really meaningful. I didn't think I'd make it.
Wow, that is such a powerful statement. Yeah. Wow.
I very strongly believe that I have a global understanding, but I am here, and I took this very seriously. I quit my job to run for office because I wanted to have a voice of reason who represented the values of my community, and I wanted to be that person to bring people back together from the polarization. And so I went from being a public Hindu to being a public servant elected to office. And it's really important to me that my first job, anybody who does a job knows, their first job is obviously to their family. Their family is very important to my children and to my husband. He patiently bears with me, whatever I do, whether it was interfaith or diversity and inclusion. But my first job, my first loyalty is to my constituents in Troy and
Just to add on to that, first of all, it reminded me of when I was in college, and my roommate at the time, who was from a non-Jewish community, we were on Thanksgiving break, and he said, "Oh, well, do you celebrate Thanksgiving?" I said, "I'm American." Because I'm Jewish, doesn't mean. But I can say with levity, because again, there was this dividing line. My first 30 years, it was just glib comments like that. The last 3 years, yeah, I've never felt
powerful statement that informs Jews very much and their relationship with Israel. And Jeremy, to hear your powerful words of inclusion and advocacy, and which are advocating for all of us, meant so much. And I think there's even a symbol here in the menorah and these beautiful candles of Diwali that, the menorah started off with 8, 9 candles, the shamas, and it wasn't a miracle, it didn't last for 8 days here. But even though this menorah has gone out, we have the Hindu candles here that are helping out spread light. And I think that's a symbol of how we have to help each other out. That sometimes we'll have 8 candles. We'll really become lights for each other and help each other and all communities in America, minority, and even sometimes majority, but all help each other out and spread light throughout this world. So thank you.